Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Tonight we have Robyn with us, and Robyn is undertaking a Master's of Social Work and has a Bachelor of Honors in Psychology. She is currently completing her practicum at Jet Psychology Services. With over 5 years in the mental health sector, she specializes in trauma-informed care. Robyn's research delves into the nexus of intimate partner violence, brain injury, and transformative care for new relationship health for survivors. In addition to her Master of Social Work studies, she coordinates the launch program for first responders at Jet Psychology Services, believing strongly in psychoeducation as a cornerstone for early trauma detection, intervention, and sustained well-being. During this evening's presentation, Robyn will be discussing coping strategies for survivors of brain injury and ways to rethink recovery with compassion. Welcome, Robyn. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone for coming. My presentation will be focused around rethinking recovery, and within that, we'll look at some coping strategies as well. I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement to get us going. So I'm coming to you from Guelph today. So Guelph is located within the Between the Lakes Purchase in Treaty 3. The treaty lands and territories of the Mississauga of the Credit. We recognize that the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples have unique, long-standing and ongoing relationships with the land and each other, and that the and Atarondawan people are part of the our archaeological record. So one of the things that I like to do with the land acknowledgement is not just to read it out. I also want to incorporate it into what I'm going to be talking about today. So we're talking about recovery, and we're talking about recovery from injury. One of the teachings that I have discovered within my social work program is, again, like I said in the acknowledgement, the connection that the Indigenous peoples of this region have with nature. And nature can be very healing, and incorporating it into your recovery plan can be also very healing. So when we're looking at different ways of looking at our recovery and what we can incorporate into our plan, I'd like you to think about incorporating nature into your healing process when you're looking at different ways to think about your recovery with compassion. Okay. So I just want to go through what we're going to talk about today really quickly. I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction. I think that Lex really covered most of what I will say, so I'll probably go through it quickly. I'll talk about what I'm referring to when I say BI or brain injury, and a little bit of an introduction about what's going to happen in the presentation. I want to talk about time, grief, foods for health, and how you can spend your time a little bit differently in your recovery. And then I'm going to do a quick grounding exercise at the end of it, something that might be a little bit different than the 4-7-8 breathing or the box breathing that are generally taught in this area. Sorry, I'm having trouble changing my slides. Okay. Okay, so who am I? As Lex said, I'm a Master of Social Work practicum student here at Jet Psychological Services. I have a BH in psychology. I've worked in this industry for about 5 years. I used to do active listening for the unhoused population of Montreal as well. I do specialize in trauma-informed care. And my research is specific to intimate partner violence and brain injury, but I do focus a lot on new relationships for survivors of both intimate partner violence and brain injury. And the last thing that Lex wouldn't have said is that I am also brain injured. So a lot of what I will talk about today has to do with the research that I've done for myself, but also within my studies. In my psychology studies, I did a thesis on in cognitive psychology that was based around memory and attention. And so some of that research really helped me with my recovery within my brain injury. And so some of this will be included from my research. Some of it is new research. And I try to make it as accessible as possible I do tend to talk very quickly when I am nervous. So if I am speaking too quickly, please raise your hand and just tell me to slow down a bit. And I will do that. Okay, so what am I talking about when I'm saying brain injury? I'm using brain injury as an umbrella term. So this can involve acquired brain injury, traumatic brain injury, concussions, anything kind of in this sphere. I know that there are obviously subcategories and different levels, and each and every one of you will have much different experiences. You'll have different symptoms. So I'm talking about brain injury as an umbrella term, but you are the expert in your own experience. So take what you find useful from what I'm going to present today. I'm actually getting ahead of myself. This is my introduction slide. So take what works for you and leave what doesn't, depending on your experience. Some of the things will be very useful. Some of them you'll have heard before. Just take the emphasis where you need it. And some of it, it might be repetition, but sometimes it's really good to hear things again so that you can make decisions about integrating it into your process with compassion. I really focus on where your strengths are for recovery. So even if you're in a place with your recovery, I know I was at one point where there's a lot of darkness involved. Looking at your strengths and looking at it all with compassion can really help kind of shift you into a different realm. So before we start today, I did want to talk a little bit about time. I know that everybody has a recovery timeline in their head when they want to get back to the before. I talk a lot about before my brain injury and after my brain injury and things that happened and things I can do and I can't do. My recovery timeline has always been very important. And time has a lot of meaning in our society. A lot of things run on time. We're taught not to waste time, not to take time, and to always be on time. If you're late, you're rude. And if you're doing nothing, it means you're not being productive, and therefore you have no value in our society. So I want to take a minute to think about that and think about what time really means, and maybe shifting the way we think about time. If we don't hit that recovery timeline, that can bring up questions of frustration and self-worth. But again, going back to the Indigenous piece that I was talking about with the land acknowledgement, time can have very different meaning for Indigenous peoples, and maybe incorporating that into your timeline. I know that for me, a lot of what we grow up with is that if you do things quickly, you're more intelligent. So it's integrated into our school system. We have 30-minute to an hour exams. You have to retrieve information very quickly. Part of my brain injury involves processing and working memory. So it does take me a little bit longer to pull information out of my brain sometimes. And really kind of coming to the realization that fast does not equal intelligent. It does not equal intelligent, but really rethinking the idea that if you need to take more time and sit with ideas, that it can correlate with intelligence as well. So I've really shifted the way I think about my own intelligence, and I really like to slow time down and sit in stillness and use that as an advantage. It really helps me think through things and get to ideas. And so for me, a lot of my timeline is really looking at using time as a calming tool. And the reality that I'm looking at is I'm rebuilding my life and rethinking about the importance of time. My timeline really looks at my timeline is based on growth and doesn't really have an end goal anymore. It's more, do I feel better than I did yesterday? And so the things that I'll be talking about for the rest of the presentation are really based on that. They're based on what has helped and what the research says helps with feeling better than you did yesterday. That's not to say that there aren't still frustrating moments. There isn't some sadness that comes with it, but these things can really help kind of focus that recovery timeline. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is grief. So when we look at grief, we generally associate it with death, but grieving is a very important part of the recovery process. It took me a long time to grieve my experience, and I think that integrating it as part of your recovery process is vital. This is something that can drastically change your life, and going through that grieving process can help kind of situate you on the start of your recovery journey. You may grieve the loss of an ability, a lifestyle. I know for myself, I used to snowboard at a pretty high level. I would heliboard and I would backcountry snowboard. And these are things that I can no longer do. I cannot afford to have another concussion. So there's certain extreme sports, certain climbing sessions that I can't be part of. Partially because it's something that, as you get older, you do less of, but it's also something that when you're thinking about your brain health, what things can't I do at the same level? So that's something I had to grieve, the difference in ability that I have now. You may be grieving relationships and a perceived sense of a loss of power. I find that a lot of power comes from grieving things that you've gone through, really kind of focusing on that grieving process before we start moving forward on the journey. There are some mental health issues that can come up with this grief, but also with your recovery. Some people may experience this, not everyone. Some depression, some anxiety. There's also some emotional regulation issues that come up with having a brain injury, so increased anger and frustration. These are all things that you can work with a neurorehabilitation specialist, a therapist that can walk through these specific areas with you and really help through neuroplasticity rewire your brain into more emotional regulated thinking. So it's all part of this rebuilding process, is finding the right community of care to really focus on what areas you need to improve on. So I'm talking about grief. And so for coping, I find grieving is very important. Healthy eating is also important. I'll talk about that more in detail in a bit, as well as exercise, moving your body. There's a lot of research around healthy eating and exercise as an integral part of recovery process, but also building connections with a support community. I believe Lex said there was a group that had just zoomed in from a group session. So this is your community. Connect with these people in your community. Having connections and talking to people with similar experiences can be very healing and also validating. I have one professor that always talked about circular thinking in her recovery process from brain injury. And just the moment when she started talking about thinking in a circle and having circular thinking, I just thought it was something weird that was specific to me. And I realized that other people with brain injuries have the same experience. And it was a very validating moment because it meant that there were other people that would understand what I'm going through. So in this rebuilding process, in this grief, you can also look at doing things that you love. In a process, it can be I don't want to say it can always be very dark, but there is some darkness that's involved in it, and focusing really on what will bring you joy today, what brings me joy in this moment, is very important. And it's really important in rebuilding your new idea of who you want to be and how you want to show up in this world. Trying something new. I know everyone has that one thing they've always wanted to try, just haven't had the time or wasn't sure if it was something that they could accomplish. I know that I've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar. It's something that I've been thinking about doing. Once I'm done my studies, I might try that. But write down all the things that you wanted to try, or the things that bring you joy, and just start only doing those things as much as possible. For me, one of the biggest things was learning how to learn. I know that sounds a little bit strange just like that, but with the processing and the memory, a lot of the studies that I did when I was doing my psychology degree, and my thesis on cognitive psychology was around learning strategies. And because my brain had changed so much, I really had to learn how to learn. And everyone does learn differently. It is something that is documented, but our academic system really teaches you to learn in one specific way that's very comfortable for a regulated system. So if you learn differently than that system, sometimes it can be hard to put yourself in that box. But there are a lot of strategies out there that can help you learn specific to the way that you need to learn, especially if your brain works a little bit differently than the standardized system, which is actually a lot of people. There sometimes you have to look at how your brain specifically learns, how you learn, and when you do that, you're also able to make learning enjoyable, which is important. And again, connecting to your community, whatever that looks like for you, whether you're part of a spiritual community, if that's part of your day to day, or different kinds of community, dancing communities, local communities, if there are places that you go just to connect with other people. Human beings, we attune to people that are around us. So when we have really good connections with our friends and family in our community, it really helps us in our recovery as well. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about food for health. Everybody has a different relationship with food, and some of you may be even working with a nutritionist. So if some of this information does not apply to you, or if you are working with a professional, please listen to them. This information comes from science around brain injury recovery and mental health recovery, and in regards to food. So these are points that if you think are helpful to you or you can apply to your life, please do, or take to the professional that you're working with and ask them if it would be helpful. So some of the foods to avoid, just a lot of these foods are part of an anti-inflammatory diet. I don't like the word diet, but that just for me just means what foods to incorporate or not incorporate into what you're eating. Inflammation is your body's immune response to harmful bacteria or injury. So when you have a brain injury, you can have inflammation in your gut and your brain and your body. So these are foods that allow you to reduce that. These are foods to avoid. So these are foods that increase your inflammation. So sugars, I'm not talking about natural sugars like maple syrup or sugars that are in apples. I'm talking about processed sugars that are in sodas, candies, and anything that has high fructose corn syrup. This can cause inflammation. Processed carbs like white bread or refined flours, again, not that wonderful sourdough bread that you get at the local bakery. I'm talking about the white bread that you get at the supermarket that has a bunch of chemicals in it. This kind of food can cause inflammation, but it's also can be harmful to your health. Artificial sweeteners or fried foods. Anything that has high sodium and trans fats can cause inflammation in your brain, but also are not particularly good for you, even though they taste amazing. And I'm sorry to say, but anything that has nitrates in it, so that wonderful bacon you get at the supermarket, salami, sausages, or cured hams, those things can all cause inflammation. If you have locally caught meats or bacon from your local butcher who smokes it themselves, they may not contain nitrates. So it's always important to look at where your food is coming from and what the ingredients are on the package. And also alcohol can be harmful. It can have harmful effects on your brain and actually slow recovery. So reducing alcohol as much as possible. will really help with that recovery, but also with brain fog and other things that come along with brain injury. But again, when you're looking through this list, food can be very comforting as well. So sometimes that comfort will outweigh what you need at that moment. So if you are having a really bad day and, having a nice cake is something that will soothe you, I'm not saying to not do that and be very strict with your diet. Just maybe when you're eating certain foods, all foods, bring in that mindfulness piece about feeling how your body is feeling when you're eating those foods. I know that if I eat 10 chicken nuggets from McDonald's, I feel like crap for the rest of the day. And because of everything that happens with brain fog and everything else I'm experiencing, I want to make sure that the foods that I'm eating do not make me feel like crap for the rest of the day. So I've been very cautious about being mindful of what I'm eating, how exactly I'm feeling, and trying to cut out those foods that are just kind of making me feel like crap. So for foods to embrace, we're looking at the microbiome and the brain connection. So anything that has to do with probiotics. So we're looking at yogurts, miso, kefir, kimchi, cheeses, that kind of thing. If you are lactose intolerant, do not follow the yogurt or cheese advice. Really look at probiotics that will fit your body and your lifestyle. Food can also be very cultural. So if none of these foods on this list fit what you eat on a regular basis, there are probiotic foods that are in every culture. And there are also probiotic supplements that you can buy to maintain that gut health, which is really important for, again, brain fog and for a healthy brain function. And then we're also looking at probiotics. These are things that prebiotics. These are things that probiotics actually eat, and that also maintains your gut health. So beans, oats, bananas, berries, leeks, that kind of food. So in the morning, having a really good bowl of oats with blueberries and yogurt could be a very good morning breakfast that can help you keep going to the middle of the day and also be very good for your gut. Also incorporating healthy fats such as olive oil, nuts, avocado, sesame oils, that kind of thing, and omega-3 fatty acids. These fatty acids are in things like fish and fish oils. There are vegan omega-3 supplements on the market as well if you don't eat meat. These are also very good for your hair growth and shininess and your nail strength. So if that is important to you as well, it's good to have omega-3 oils. And it's also very good for your brain function. Spices such as turmeric or herbs like oregano or chamomile. So if you're having a chamomile tea before you go to bed, those things can be very good for your brain health and for decreasing inflammation as well. All of this might seem like a no-brainer, but I do find that creating a really good relationship with the food that we eat and really looking at how the food that we eat changes our mood, changes our health, changes how we're feeling. I know for me, a lot of the time, especially in the beginning, eating certain foods would drastically change my mood and how I was feeling. So in feeling better just meant that I had to focus on exactly what I was eating. And there are so many YouTube channels out there where you can learn wonderful recipes. And so falling in love with the process of making good food is also a wonderful part of recovery. So this section used to be called exercise, but I realize there's a lot of things in this section that aren't exercise. So I'm now calling it how we spend our time. So moving your body is always very important in general body health, general brain health, but is especially important when we have a brain injury. If you're working with a physiotherapist or a chiropractor or a team of people, again, follow their advice. If you see something that you like, maybe ask them about it and incorporate it into your wellness plan. Yeah, exercise is key to being healthy, but some things you may not like doing. Like I hate running. I do not run. I wouldn't even run if a bear was chasing me. So I do not incorporate running into my process. Um, my mother, for example, she really enjoys walking and hiking. So this is something that she does to move her body. You could also, if you're a fan of dancing or going to the gym, these are also things. The recommendation is doing at least 30 minutes of exercise a day, but this will really depend on your body's ability, how you're feeling that day. I know there are days when I have increased migraines, and those days I cannot go for a walk or do a run. I do try to do as much as I can. There is a lot of science around small habit forming. There's actually a book called Automatic Habits, I believe, and it really goes into starting small. So if regular exercise is not something that you currently do, trying to incorporate, say, 10 minutes a week, then 10 minutes every couple days, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just kind of working that up. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is cardio or high intensive. You can also look at different mobility exercises such as yoga, strength training, resistance training that involve mobility movements as well can be very helpful. As you age, your body does lose certain muscle density. For women, when you turn 40, your muscle density goes down. So lifting heavy and incorporating strength training into your activities can actually help increase your health and your overall body capacity as well. I know from my parents, for example, they're close to their 80s. They're having all of the health issues that come with getting older, but because they've maintained their mobility and they exercise quite regularly and they eat healthy, they're able to better kind of traverse these areas of old age health that they're going through. So doing all these things will not mean that you are always healthy. It just means when those other health things arise, and because brain injury is involved, it's always good to stay as healthy as possible. Mobility can be an issue, and I know for me, it took me a number of years to really get my hip mobility in check. After about 20 minutes of walking, I'd always have really um, tight hips, and it wouldn't be fun going for walks. So really working on my hip mobility was something that was important, and different joint mobilities. It does take a while, but again, falling in love with that process of really taking care of every aspect of your body can really also focus your brain when you're doing within your recovery, because you're focusing on, like, the goal is maintaining your health. It's not necessarily running for 3 hours a week. It's what did I do this week to maintain my health? And it could just be simply doing some hip mobility stretches on the ground while I'm watching TV that day. So again, starting slow, having the goal being just doing something, one little thing for a couple minutes or a couple hours that week. It's a good way to increase your endorphins and feel good about your body. For me, a lot of strength training and resistance training and rock climbing has been really good for having little moments of success. Every time I would add 5 pounds to the weight that I'm training with, it just gives me that little bit of success that sometimes you need a win, and so really focusing on the small wins has been very important. Another really important thing that we generally overlook in recovery, and in everyday life, again, with this productivity culture, is we forget to rest, and we don't put a lot of value on rest. So I'm telling you all of these things that you can be doing, but I do also want one of the things that you are doing is resting. Doing nothing is extremely important in recovery. Your body needs time to recover, and to do that, you need to not do things. So really changing the way that we are looking at rest as normalized. What are you doing today? I'm resting. That is it. That is my activity. And you are being productive if you are resting. And that can look like a lot of things. That can be a nap. It can just be sleeping all day if you have that kind of time. It can be meditation, taking a warm bath, listening to music, reading books, watching Netflix, whatever just kind of gets your body into that really relaxed state. It is a very important part of your recovery. Also, creativity can really help, change, like I said, trying something new, changing the way we spend our time. Some things you might not be able to do after the brain injury, or you might not like doing them anymore. So picking up some creative things. Sometimes I do like to paint. I'm not good at it at all. My creations are awful, but I love the process. So other ideas are woodworking, metalworking, pottery. These are all things that can kind of bring out that creative spirit. Again, they don't have to be good. It's just a way of kind of expressing and being involved in, tactile movements with your hands can really help with that neuroplasticity. Writing, journaling, writing music, creating music can also be creative outlets. And if you are working with a therapist, you can also ask them about art therapy. There are a lot of directed art therapy activities that can be very healing as well. So all of these things are kind of equated to find new dreams, find new things that can bring joy to your life. Because everything I've talked about, whether it's eating, whether it's food, whether it's how you're spending your time, the idea is focusing on what actually causes joy within your life and your everyday. So those are basically the main parts of how I have been coping and how I've used research and what I've used to help in my recovery. One really amazing thing that I have done as well is this grounding exercise. This exercise is from a book called Widen the Window by Elizabeth Stanley. Dr. Elizabeth Stanley, she is a US veteran. She wrote a book specifically on training your brain and body to thrive during stress and recovery from trauma. A lot of the trauma that she is talking about is psychological trauma, but a lot of the activities in her book and her program can be applied to biological as well. And so I wanted to walk through this this grounding exercise with you. I've got the book with me, and I will slightly read portions of it. And I've put most of the steps on this slide. So if you did want to take a screenshot and kind of keep it for later, you can do that. And you can also email me, and I can send you kind of a screenshot of the book if you want all the details. So if you are all able to indulge me for about 3 minutes, we'll just run through this activity. And so if you could all find a comfortable place to sit, either in the chair, on the floor, but the important is to have your back against a solid surface. So whether it's the wall, whether it's the chair, a door, a fridge, whatever you've got around you. We could all take a really big deep breath in and out at the same time. So in we go. Wonderful. So now I just want you to sit in the chair or on the floor. The importance is that your back is straight, it's against the chair or the wall, your feet are flat on the ground. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, excuse me, please do so. If you don't, that is okay. Just put your gaze forward and kind of soften your gaze while you're doing this, this activity. Focus on, taking nice breaths, calming breaths. You want to bring your shoulders up to your ears, push them back, bring them down, just to kind of give you a little bit more relaxation there. Allow yourself to notice how you're feeling and how the feeling of being supported by the chair or the ground, how that feels for you. We're aiming to kind of feel that sensation in your body rather than think about or analyze what that support feels like. Notice the contact of your body between your legs and the chair, your butt and the chair, the soles of your feet on the ground. If you're having trouble feeling your feet on the ground because you're wearing shoes, you can take your shoes off, take your socks off, or just wiggle your toes so you can feel that connection to the ground. As you're noticing the support from your surroundings or from your chair, briefly scan your body from head to toe and kind of notice any place that you're feeling some tension. In particular, check your brow and your jaw and your neck and your shoulders. See what's happening in those areas. See if the tension shifts when you do notice it. The idea is not to try to do something, you're just noticing this tension. And now bring your attention back to your physical sensation of contact of your body and wherever you're sitting. You may notice that the hardness of the chair or the floor, your feet are on carpet, the softness of the carpet. You might feel some tingling, some coolness, some softness. Pay attention to these sensations at 3 different contact points. So between your leg, butt, and the lower portion of the chair and the back of the chair, between your feet and the ground, and where your hands touch your legs, or if you're touching something else, or if you're clasping your hands, look at those 3 contact points and focus your attention on which contact point has the most sensation. If one does not have more sensation than the other, try rubbing your hands on your legs or wiggling your toes again. The contact point that has the most sensation, we're going to focus all of our attention on that point. So the one that has the most sensation, we want to focus on that point now for about a minute. So since you've selected that contact point, direct and sustain your attention there. Notice the sensation at the contact point in greater detail. For example, if you've chosen your butt on the chair or your feet on the floor, is your left or your right butt cheek holding more weight? Is your right foot or left foot harder on the ground? Just kind of notice more details about it. With non-judgmental curiosity, just noticing what is happening in that area. If you notice your attention wandering off, simply recognize that that has happened. And again, with non-judgmental curiosity, just bring yourself back to that contact point. And then we'll take a big breath in and out. And that's the end of the exercise. Elizabeth Stanley does suggest doing it about 5 minutes a day, but again, do it for as long as you need. So 1 minute, 2 minutes to start off with, kind of work your way up. At this point, feel how you're feeling at this moment. If you found it helpful to you, if you did actually participate in the whole thing, how are you feeling now? And if you felt it was useful for you, then it's something you can incorporate. Again, I can email you the whole thing, or you can take a screenshot and kind of go through these steps. The first part of that will probably take you about 30 seconds when you're doing it on your own. It was just talking through it that takes a bit, and then the rest is just maintaining that attention for the minute, the 5 minutes, the 10 minutes, whatever you choose. So thank you all for coming today. And here's the Brain Injury Association of Waterloo-Wellington's contact information. If you do want to attend more of these sessions, or if you have questions for them, this is my contact information. If you do have any questions about the session or what I've talked about today, I'm also accepting individual clients for individual therapy if you felt that you liked my presentation and wanted to come see me. But thank you all for coming, and I'd love to hear from you, what helps you cope, and if there was any ideas that you wanted me to expand on, I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks so much, Robyn, for sharing not only your personal experiences with finding the coping strategies that work for you, but also what you found throughout your studies. We appreciate you being here with us to share everything.
Well, thank you for having me.